Hey everyone, it's DL here, and welcome to Correcticise for Life Lesson 3, which is balance. And balance is a subject very near and dear to my heart for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was the subject of my first post-professional continuing education course that I taught. And secondly, it is what drew me to become a specialist in foot and ankle dysfunction. So you'll understand a little bit more why that happens as I go through the presentation and why the foot is so important to balance. So again, I'll just go through some logistics here. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box. And if you don't mind just letting me know that you can hear me. And also, if you're having trouble getting on, or if you know somebody who would be interested in any of these subjects, please do let them know that the recordings are on, and we're going live on Fix You Online TV as well. And that is a YouTube channel that has these recordings from the previous 2 days as well as today's recording and everyone going forward. So again, I put together a little presentation for you, and we'll go ahead and get that started. Like I said, any questions? Okay, so there is a question. Do I subscribe to YouTube channel to get the recordings? You can subscribe to the YouTube channel to get announcements, but the recordings are on YouTube right now. So as soon as they're finished here, even before I have them done in Zoom, they go straight onto YouTube. So you have direct access to that straight away as soon as it's done. All right. Okay, but do feel welcome to subscribe and let people know about the channel. Fix You Online TV. All right, so let me go ahead to my presentation, and I will need to share the screen. So let me just make sure I've done that, which I don't think I did. And here we are. So again, for those of you who might not be familiar with my work, I am a physical therapist with advanced or degrees in cardiac rehab and fitness, as well as a master's in exercise science. My website, which we are updating to include the new Correcticise for Life membership, can be found at fixyouonline.com. YouTube, I mentioned, is Fix You Online TV, and the Facebook group is Fix You Online. So most of it, all of my information, I try to put everywhere, and you can reach out to me via Facebook or comments in YouTube, or you can also go ahead and take a look at the website. And I'll go ahead and answer questions at the end. So I'm going to get started with this because I do see that there is a question in the chat box. So it already advanced for me here. So the question is let's go through what is balance. And the definition of balance is, trying to get rid of the top part here. Balance is the ability to control. Control is the key word to balance. The body's position, either when you're stationary, meaning that you're not moving, or when you are when you're doing a movement. So that is like a gymnastic stunt, like a cartwheel, as demonstrated here, but you could even think about walking requires balance. Sitting, that's more of a stationary position, but it too requires balance. We just oftentimes don't think about it until balance is challenged. And certainly, as the research shows, it becomes challenged as we get older. And hopefully when this presentation is done, you'll get an idea of why that happens, but more importantly, what you can do to change all that. So how do we control our body's position? And the best way to maximize our position in space is to keep our center of gravity equidistant between our base of support. I'll go over this in a minute, but I want to demonstrate that on this photograph because I think it's illustrated well. So this ballerina the center of gravity is located within our pelvis at about the level 2 of our sacrum. So there are vertebrae that go all the way down to our lumbar spine. Underneath our lumbar spine is a flat bone called our sacrum. And the sacrum has kind of holes in it. And each level of the sacrum goes from 1 to 5. So sacral level 2 is where our center of gravity is located. So if we went ahead and did like a magician saw right through this ballerina, the center of gravity would be in the middle at about sacral level 2, which is kind of just above the butt, the crack in the butt. All right, so now that we know where our center of gravity is, we need to think about our base of support, and I'll get to that a little bit more. But in this illustration, the ballerina actually has several bases of support. One is this rock, right? The second is her shoe, and the third would be her foot. So she has like 3 bases of support that she's dealing with here, right? Well, hopefully the rock is stationary, so that will not be moving and that will be stable. But then she is on her toe point, which is a very, very small base of support. And then also, and that is then part of her foot or her toe, which is also a very, very small base of support. When you think about a duck, right? Big webbed feet, very, very big base of support. Have you ever seen a duck fall? Right? It doesn't really happen. But what she's doing here is she's maximizing control by changing her posture, right? So she's elevated on tiptoes, so her body weight is going forward. Because she's a ballerina, she tends to be extremely mobile. And you can see that her knees are actually hyperextending here a bit, which is not great for her knee joints. But what she's doing is she's able to keep that center of gravity over the base of support, which is her toes. And she's offsetting that position by her head and her arms being back. It would be much more difficult for her to maintain this position if she were upright. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Alrighty, so what we're looking at here is I just defined the center of gravity. It varies from person to person because it's not a particular height. It's located within an individual's body. So it's at sacral level 2, which usually is about 4 centimeters below the belly button. It can be affected by posture, certainly. And when you have a lower center of gravity, you have an increased balance. That tends to be why gymnasts tend to be short in stature, right? Because the lower the center of gravity, the better your balance is. There's less movement or opportunity for movement beyond that base of support, which in humans is our feet. The base of support are structure or structures that are supporting our body weight. So in the ballerina, not only was her base of support within her body, which was her toes in that example, but she was also being supported by her toe shoes as well as the rock that she was standing on that I pointed out. So we have what I call gross bases of support. And that's dependent on our position, and it can be within the body or external to it, like the ballerina. But then we have specific bases of support, which are structures or systems that are within our body that will go ahead and affect our ability to balance and our ability to maintain our center of gravity with control within our base of support. So let's look into that. So again, here are some examples of a base of support that is gross or external, which would be the feet, the shoes. In sitting, it would be our pelvic floor, which houses our center of gravity, as well as the chair that we're sitting on. And also it could be assistive devices or furniture in standing or sitting. So an assistive device is just something to give us another base of support or to widen our base of support. So that is another thing that we would use to help us maintain control if our body is in fact failing. So when I worked with geriatric patients in their homes, a lot of times somebody who had difficulty balancing would obviously hold on to furniture. And again, that would be just so that they would be able to maintain more comfort in standing. Now, that's not great for training because you want to train the systems that are not doing a good job, and the hands are not one of those. So here are the systems that are important with regard to balance, and this is how we got on the subject, because we talked yesterday about the vestibular system. And if you missed that lecture, I encourage you to go back and see it, because I very much enjoyed presenting it and doing some more research on it myself. And that's the coordination and lets us know about our position in space. And one of the things that was interesting that came up yesterday when I was doing my research, and I did not mention, was that the difference, the larger those canals, right? You have the 3 semicircular canals, which are organs of the vestibular system. The larger that they are, the more coordinated the mammal that exists, and it's relative to the body of that mammal. So that was really interesting. And then they talked about Homo sapiens versus a different kind of early man, Neanderthals. That was it. And the Neanderthals could not run, but the Homo sapiens could, which is probably why we outlasted them as far from an evolutionary standpoint. And also the Homo sapiens had a larger semicircular canal. And the ones that do, the mammals that do, are better runners. So that's what allowed humans to develop the skill of running, particularly running long distances and being able to maintain orientation without going off balance and becoming efficient, because again, it's efficiency that allows us to have better endurance and better skill, and obviously better control. Orientation is going to be important with vision. So again, when your eyes are closed and let's say you're standing on one foot, I'm doing it right now, I'm able to maintain my stability very easily. When I close my eyes, it's more of a challenge for me to balance on one foot, and I actually had to come off of it. And that's why yesterday I had you test your vestibular system by keeping your eyes closed and marching in place to see where you wound up with regard to orientation when your vision was taken out of the equation. And that's also why individuals are more prone to falling at night. Then we have tactile. So that again tells us about our orientation in space. We can use our fingers for tactile input to allow us to help us balance. And we have so many sensory organs in the tips of our fingers. It's very, very effective. So going back to my practice with the geriatric patients in their homes, sometimes when we walk the hallway, an individual will just take their one finger and just place it along the wall as they were walking. So again, incorporating an extra sense. But what does that tell me? It tells me that the other senses that are important for balance, or the other systems, are not working well. So what are the other ones, right? They're the vestibular system. Vision is usually not a problem unless somebody is visually impaired, which is obvious to us for other reasons. So when somebody requires that tactile input of the hands, it's usually because there are deficits in the vestibular system, the proprioception, which I'll get to in a minute, or the musculoskeletal system as well. So those are the 3 other systems that are important. Now, what is proprioception? It's the sense of self-movement and the position in space. And those receptors, okay, are located within the muscles, the tendons, and the joints. So that is one of the reasons why the musculoskeletal system is going to be important for balance, because remember, balance is about the control of body position. So how do you control? Well, first you have to have the sense of where you are. That's proprioception. Where is that located? Again, muscles, tendons, joints, right? Then you're going to have to control your body. How do you do that? Your muscles, right? Particularly the core muscles that we spoke about on day one when we talked about fitness. And the aspect of fitness that is often overlooked in traditional exercise programs is the strengthening or the strength or fortitude of those core muscles whose job is to control. So again, very, very important. And then yesterday, when we talked about the vestibular system, I had mentioned that the vestibular system is important for the development of muscle tone. So again, it's all kind of coming together why balance becomes a problem as we get older or even at a younger age. Some of the things to cue in on. And if your fitness program is not addressing these particular areas, then your balance is probably not going to improve, because you might be practicing standing on one foot, but if you're not addressing the vestibular system, right, then you are not doing the as much good as possible. You're not being as efficient or as thorough. So moving on. There are then structures that are going to influence these systems, and they're going to influence them in several different ways. The first is the foot, right? It is our base of support. So again, most people do not fall when they're sitting down unless their base of support might be their chair, which is unstable, right? It's usually the foot. And that's going to be important for, again, the musculoskeletal system. So we're talking about proprioception, then also tactile. So when you are barefoot, you oftentimes will have better balance, often, not always, but often. So many people get these thick orthopedic shoes for comfort, but it actually diminishes their balance. And I actually have a presentation coming up with an individual who has created a foot insert to help with proprioception and tactile influences to the foot to help with balance. And that'll be presented in the next few weeks. The next aspect is the pelvis. So again, the pelvis houses the center of gravity, and that needs to stay in control, okay? It needs to be controlled in order for us to maintain our balance. And ideally, it needs to be controlled equidistant between our base of support, which in standing is our feet, or in motion typically is in our feet. So it's going to be important to control that from the musculoskeletal standpoint, as well as proprioception. Then there's the rib cage, again, important for musculoskeletal control, as well as where our body is in space. So when I'm starting to get into these other areas, I'm looking at the base of support. So the rib cage is actually the base of support of the head, ultimately, which then houses our vision and vestibular system. Now, why is the base of support so important? Because I have a little saying that says alignment dictates function, frequency, and flow. And the alignment of a posture is going to be important because of something called the length tension ratio, which states that a muscle will contract with greatest vigor when it's at a particular length. So that's why it is important to realign the body so that you can rebalance the musculoskeletal system so that those proprioceptive receptors located in the muscles, the joints, and the tendons are able to react quickly and appropriately for control. And again, balance equals control and the maintenance of our center of gravity within our base of support. So that is balance in a nutshell. So I will go ahead and get to any questions that you have about balance. Tomorrow's presentation at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is going to be about fall prevention, because fall prevention is actually, balance is important to fall prevention, but there's a whole lot of other things that are aspects that are going to be important for the preventing of falls. So if you or someone you love has this as a concern, it's going to be kind of a must see for them, either live or in the replay. So I'm looking here. Okay, so somebody gave me some feedback from yesterday. They did the marching in place and you only moved forward. That's not bad. And people did the same thing. You were marching, but you were marching forward. That's good. So what that means is that, again, the idea is to stay in the same spot without deviation, so that whatever's going on in your vestibular system is probably equal on both sides. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is perfect, but it does not have you deviate from side to side, which I think, in many people, there's a rotation, particularly if there's damage to one side versus the other. So thank you for that feedback. All right. You could also try it for a minute and see how that goes. All right. And then I will go ahead to the YouTube and see if there's any questions on YouTube as I go there. So another way to to go ahead and test your balance, which we'll go through in just a second, is I'll give you another test for today, and then you can see how you do with that. So let's go ahead and just make sure there's no questions on YouTube, which I cannot find. Nope. Okay. Nope. No questions on YouTube. All right. So the way to go ahead and take a test of your balance is a good one is eyes closed. So when you're standing on one foot, you can go ahead and stand and then close your eyes and test how well your balance is, and that will determine how much vision is an issue for you. So what's really interesting is that if you look at the sport of gymnastics, and I used to compete in gymnastics as a young child, is that the tricks that are done that are not vision based, so when your head is back, are worth more than when you are even like a back flip on the beam, right? You would think, oh gosh, that's got to be so much more difficult. However, actually keeping your eyes fixed and focused allows you to have better balance on the balance beam. So a good test to test how your balance is to go ahead and stand on one foot, see how long you can do it with keeping your eyes open. And again, it helps to focus on a point, and then go ahead and do that with your eyes closed. When you do that, you will then look at you will be taxing your vestibular system and then your proprioceptive system in the foot, as well as looking at the alignment of the foot. Because if you have a malaligned foot, then the small muscles in the proprioception in those joints are not going to work as well. So again, when you want to get better at something, it's good to know where your deficits are. So are they in the feet? Is it in the vestibular system? Okay, so how do you test the vestibular system? What you would do, again, many of you did this yesterday where you can close your eyes and march in place. That's one way, okay? The other way would be to then stand on one foot. If you're able to do that, focus on a point ahead of you and move your head up and down, and then go ahead side to side, and then go ahead and go diagonal. And again, see which directions are challenging to you, okay, when you're able to do that. And that will go ahead and test your vestibular system and your vision, which again is important. However, for most individuals, it's easily corrected by cataract surgery or glasses. And it's also very obvious, where things like vestibular and proprioception are less so. So again, we will go ahead and test those and then see where you are with those. and to determine. So eyes closed, proprioception, maybe vestibular, eyes open, movement, definitely vestibular in nature. So go ahead and do that. You can test both feet. And then again, you would want to look at the alignment of the system that you're taxing, which again, in standing is going to be the foot, the base of support, as well as the center of gravity. So tomorrow, 11 a.m., I'm going to go ahead and go through fall prevention, some of the steps that you can take to avoid falling, both in your environment and then also intrinsically. And many of those we're starting to get a sense of at this point in time. So if there's no other questions, I will go ahead and bid you a good night and hopefully see you guys in the morning. Again, feel free to like, share, comment, ask questions, put in topics of things that you might be interested in, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.